I thought today we could talk about peppers again. The last time we talked about the peppers, we had just seeded the tray that is behind me. Now, these have been growing for about 12 days and they're doing very, very well. It took about 8 days for them to sprout, and that is pretty quick. Last year, it took me a lot longer to get plants to actually show up, and what I did is panic. And I panicked because I thought I had failed. And I ended up planting all of the seeds all over again. So instead of having 40 or 50 plants, I had 90 to 100 plants. And my nature is to plant all of those. And we had such an overabundance of peppers that I couldn't even give them all away. So don't get anxious if your plants are not sprouting immediately. They will take anywhere from 7 to 21 days to sprout. Because you're starting your seeds a little bit early, you know that you have a chance to reseed if you need to. Before I talk about the care of the seedlings, I want to give you a little background information about peppers. They are originally from Mexico, Peru, and Bolivia, and have since been domesticated and distributed around the world. Now, there are 5 major species of peppers, and regardless of the type you're growing, they are all grown pretty much the same way. But I wanted to talk about the 3 species that are most common, and that is the annuum species, which is bell pepper, cayenne, serrano, salsa peppers that I grow, my mariachi peppers. Then the genus. Genus is also very common. I don't grow any of them. Those are ghost peppers and habaneros, a little bit too hot for me. But I'm growing a new one this year that's a Baccatum. A Baccatum is a fruity or even a very hot pepper, but what distinguishes them is this is going to be a plant that grows up to 3 feet tall. Most plants are 18 inches, 20 inches from the annuum and the genus family. So I'm really excited about the lemon drop that I have this year, and we'll see how that grows. The last time we talked about how to care for your seeds was just after we planted them. And we talked about how you need to have a soil temperature of 72 to 85 degrees. Now, most people don't want their house that warm. So there are tools that you can use to ensure that the soil temperature does stay at 72 to 85 degrees. The first is a heat mat, and it is just like one you would use for a backache, except for it has no cover and it's waterproof. Now, the other tool that we have is a humidity dome. This is controversial. Some people say you don't need them at all. Some people say use them. I use them sometimes. I don't use them all the time. So it's not a requirement, but it can help keep the heat and moisture level up in your seed trays. Now, this is a cheap plastic dome that I have. They do have them that are more expensive that will have vents in them so that the moisture can be released. Now, if I want the heat and not the moisture, and I'm using the cheap version, what I do is I put pencils on the very edge of each corner of my tray, and then instead of having a tight seal, I actually place this on top of those pencils. It allows some of that moisture to be released. I think you'll know if you have too much moisture. Go ahead and take that humidity dome off if you feel like it's too much moisture. It is not required. Once the seedlings sprout, you want to make sure that you continue to keep the soil temperature at least 72 to 85 degrees. You'll do that until the plants get their second set of leaves. Those are called true leaves. They're born with tiny leaves called cotyledons. So you're going to keep that temperature up. Once they've got the true leaves, you can reduce the temperature. You don't need the heat mat any longer. The other thing that you're going to do right away is you're going to turn on your grow light. My grow lights are 24 watts. I keep my plants 2 to 3 inches away from that light, and I do that pretty much until they're transplanted in the garden. You'll also notice that I have a fan, and that fan just helps with air circulation. If there's any potential for molds or fungus to grow on the surface of your soil, it will help reduce that. It also makes the stems of the plants stronger, so they're more prepared when they're ready to be transplanted in the garden. They'll already be accustomed to be blown around in the wind. And the next thing I want to talk about is watering and fertilizer. We've talked before about bottom watering. And so if I were to just bottom water, I would grab my pitcher of water and I would pour it directly into this. And that's what most people do. I tend to be a little bit of a micromanager. So I actually like to lift up each seed tray to feel the weight of it, to see if it actually needs water. Despite the fact that I've used the same kind of soil and I feel like the packages are all packed the same, some of them dry out faster than others. If they don't want to be watered, that's the last thing I want to do to a pepper plant. So for example, this particular one is very heavy. And so I'm actually going to put this one aside in a seed tray that I have over here to my right. I don't want it to be watered again. Pepper plants do not like to be overwatered. So you want them to be moist, but you don't want them to be soaked or muddy. It's a really good way to kill your peppers. And I've done that. I did it once this year already. I have to replant my mariachi peppers. I'm not sure how that particular package got overwatered. I seem to water it the same and it still got overwatered. So know that you make mistakes. That's why they always recommend that you plant 10% more than what you expect. If you get all of those plants, you can give the extra plants to a friend. So the last thing that I wanted to talk about is fertilizer. I always recommend organic fertilizer. This is the product that I use. Now, if you have a really sensitive nose or a sensitive stomach, mixing this smells like you walked into a cow barn. So if you're really sensitive to smells, you might consider a non-organic. Again, I believe in organic gardening. I grew up on a farm. This smell does not bother me. I didn't fertilize much last year. I learned from a group of folks who said, when the leaves start to get dull, give it some fertilizer. But I've done a lot more research and I plan to follow this new protocol this year. I'm going to give these guys some fertilizer in the next day or two. Until they get their first true leaves, though, you want to use 1/4 of the recommendation on the back of the bottle here. So this is a liquid mix. You just pour this into the water that you have, and then you'll put it into the base of your tray, just like you would if there was no fertilizer in that. Once you do this, you're going to go ahead and fertilize every 2 weeks. But again, do not use full strength until you get the true leaves on the plants. I hope this has been helpful. If you have any questions, please ask in the comments below. Also, know that there's a transcript of what we talked about below and a link to any products that we talked about. Thanks so much for listening, and just thank you. See you next time. Just a quick afterthought. I failed to mention that your lights should stay on for 12 to 15 hours. Sorry about that. Until next time.